Now, it was told to me, there's been a couple of theories. It was told to me by some people that this is the only one. But it was also told to me that back in the 1950s, Homer Strock, who owned the property, took out 2 or 3 other kilns and used the stone for other purposes. So I tend to believe there were more of them, because there's an awful lot of stones in this property, which don't look like they belong there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can see the problem here is that tree is a real problem, because if that goes, it'll tear the whole
Yep.
the whole kiln apart. But this stone that fell out has to be put back, because I'm afraid if another one goes, that keystone goes, then the whole thing is kaput. That's the stone there,
Right.
which fell. That piece, I don't know where that is, but that probably should be replaced also. Because interesting enough, back in the 1980s when I was out here, we took a picture of this kiln, and it was perfect. All the stones were there. So it's just a matter over the years that this has happened. But I mean, you can't envision anything good happening with this tree,
Right.
Because it's leaning, and so if it was trimmed down, to the point where it made some sense, I think it would help preserve the kiln also.
Yeah.
If you have anybody in the Historic Society that does that kind of work, that would be a real plus for this kiln. But it is in a great state of preservation. You know how these things work?
No.
All right.
How do they work? Tell me.
Here's the way they work. Back in the 1800s, the farmers, not in this area, but in the adjoining areas where they had very acidic soil, were very interested in spreading lime on their fields to neutralize the acidity for their crops.
Right.
So these kilns sprung up. Almost every farm in the limestone area had one, not only for their own purposes, because they didn't need it so much because they already had the limestone soil, but to sell it to adjacent farmers. Now, if you see an area where there's 3 or 4 of them, that's a more commercial operation, where they were really maybe even putting it on the railroad to ship it to distant areas. But the way it worked was, as you can see, it's collapsed back in here, but there was a hole up top, big. You could, as big as this almost. And at the bottom of that hole, they would have like railroad rails crisscrossed like a grid, and they would pile the stone, big stones, this size, even bigger, in there, and then light the fire in here. And it had to burn for a week in order to reduce the stone to powder, which it will do if you keep the fire going. The problem became, with wood as the fuel, you had to constantly tend to the fire, which meant that somebody had to be here overnight for a week. So that they would generally share, the farmers in the area would share the responsibility of tending the fire. Naturally, if you're sitting out here by yourself overnight, there was drinking involved. So if you dig in front of this kiln, I guarantee you're going to find old whiskey bottles. It's like a sure thing. And there were incidences where the tender fell asleep, the fire went out, and the tender suffocated from the fumes from the fire. If you look at the old Springtown Times, you'll find them in there. So-and-so died in front of the kiln at so-and-so's property.
Okay, it was actually reported in the Springtown Weekly Times,
And of course, drinking was involved. It had to be. It just had to be.
Yeah, that was a staple back then.
Exactly. So anyway, it's a beautiful kiln. It's in a good state of preservation. I mean, I've seen them where they're just a pile of stones. And it'd be a shame for this one not to be preserved because, like I say, not that many of them right here.
Right.